Welcome to We Use Our Powers for Good. I'm Dory, and this is my sister Meg. Welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking about letting people go. Like, this is so great. Like, just because we're in the same family, or we're in the same class, or we're on the same street, or in the same car, does not mean I need to care about what's happening here, right? The people in my life need to do some work. I got to communicate well to gain admission to the show, right? And that was like a shocker to me that I have a choice about who gets to show up because not everybody that's physically there gets in here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about your example good.
My high school.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that's super relatable to people
yeah,
versus me talking about a family member, which I'll do in a minute.
yeah, yeah. I remember graduating high school, and everybody was talking about, in 20 years we'll have this reunion, and I maybe even said it. I said I'm never going to be friends with most of you ever again. I did say
I'm
it.
sure that landed.
It did go well. And they were like, and I just met dad, all these things, and I was just like, I'm out of here. um Aside from the hometown, the people, I knew I was evolving, and I knew I was going to have a 360 moment. I just felt it coming. I wasn't fully honest with myself, I wasn't fully honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were just,
You're in
that was
different places.
the best I could do.
Yeah,
Given the
for
circumstances, and
sure.
I knew there was more to come.
For sure.
And so I knew I was never going to speak to 99.98% of them.
Right. And side note, just the fact that you had the balls to say that. I feel like most people, as a senior in high school, wouldn't say that to a group of people. So I love that for you.
God, they're gonna hear and be like, I remember. What an asshole.
Right.
But I also was being honest,
Yeah.
versus
Pretending.
pretending.
Because the core of that comes from when we're with people that we don't feel relaxed, we don't feel safe, we don't feel like they're listening. So, like, we could tie in lots of things we've already talked about. If I'm sitting with someone and I feel agitated and annoyed, why is that? Right? I'm going to want to take a look at that. If I continue to feel that way, I want to reflect on that. And then I want to then use some words to say, hey, when you say such and such, that doesn't feel good to me, right? So I'm saying that because I also appreciate there's a part of if people are in our lives and they're gonna be like family, I want to give them a chance, right? But certainly there are going to be people like this is a kind of a different example because we're older. I When I was divorcing a handful of years ago, the different friends and people that were in my life, you can just imagine how raw and real I was. I was so sad. And just because of how I operate, I didn't have a need to hide it. I talked about this previously. I didn't have a need to hide it, which I don't need to. That's for me to decide, right? Oh my gosh, I made people really uncomfortable. And on the one hand, I get it because they're not used to it and there's no context for it. But also, like, it's fucking. I didn't ask you. I just asked you to be here. I didn't ask you to make me a filet mignon or a souffle or something, right? I just really asked you to be here with me. I would say, I want to say 90% of the people in my life evaporated because they couldn't deal. So, on the one hand, some of that was about them and some of it was about me. The core, though, was really appreciating that you continue to show me that you can't meet me here. I need to just honor what you're telling me, and that's okay.
Right.
So there is a huge piece of once I got to a place that I understood the reality here, it's okay to let people go.
Yeah.
And people can also go in a waiting area.
Yeah.
Some would call it detention. Some would call it the waiting room.
The naughty seat.
Our mom had a step, the bottom step in her front room for the entryway.
The foyer.
The foyer. Well, shut up. That's what it's called. And she had a naughty step, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so if you walked in and someone was sitting on it, like kicking their feet around,
That's where timeout was.
they were in trouble.
Yeah.
I certainly have put people in that waiting room just to see how they're able to pivot and shift. I put some boundaries in place.
Yeah.
And some people make it out of there and some don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think of not until recently that I've had relationships fizzle fry out, and it was, I realized I didn't want to respond to them honestly, and I would take my time. I'm like, how do I placate this? Essentially, it was like, how do I say the right words to make them be a certain way, which is
Mm.
manipulation.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then that didn't feel good.
Yeah, that's great self-reflection though.
Yeah. And then it was like, here's honestly how I feel. And how you're treating me is not okay.
Mm.
And then it was, and I was like, wow, you just showed your true colors. And if this is how you treat people, because you can have arguments, you can go back and forth, but there's routes that people take that are unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm out. Bye.
Yeah.
Forever.
And the beauty of what you said is you decide that.
Yeah.
So there may be things that might be okay in some of my relationships, but they might not work for you. And that's kind of a whole other thing, is what I said before, is that you trust how you feel. So I'll use this example. When I first met my partner, we were, oh my dear God, we were on it's not a blind date, but it was on an app. My last first date I had started dating was like 30 years ago. And we would just met at a coffee shop. We had texted some, and he asked if he could hug me. I think I told this story. And the minute that we hugged, it was like, oh, you just feel so comfortable. And I would suggest to you, most of the people that we're around, we know pretty quickly, or we know on an ongoing basis, oh, every time I'm around Uncle so-and-so, I don't feel good about myself. Well, then don't be around them by yourself, right? You do not have to be in relationships or around people that you don't feel good about. And you know what? You're not always going to know why, and that's okay.
Right. But your gut.
Yep. Trust your gut.
Your gut's going to tell you.
Yep. Always, always, always.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be the trust your gut. Always trust your gut.
For sure.
Yeah. So in the comments, let us know, is that really easy for you or not easy for you to trust your gut? And then just for a cue for some of you that this is really new, if you hear words in your head and they're negative and judgy, that is not your gut. Your gut speaks just very clear, truthful, objective things. And most typically your first thing that you hear is your gut. You can do it. You know, whatever. So yeah, just learn to listen and trust. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I was gonna say look, listen, and feel.
Yes. Look, listen, and feel. Like, share, and subscribe. Boop, boop.
Thanks for being here.